It is still the premier show to play. Everybody knows the Festival of Friends, the legacy, it's like playing Woodstock. It's like playing, Mariposa. It's been going on forever. Who doesn't want to be part of it?
Welcome to Gritty History, a podcast from the City of Hamilton and Hamilton Civic Museums, taking you beyond the physical museums and diving into the fascinating stories from the city's past and present. In this audio series, we'll explore the people and places that make Hamilton, Ontario so special. Our first series, Liner Notes, digs into the work of Hamilton music. My name is Meredith Leonard, and I'm a senior curator at Hamilton Civic Museums. Joining me for this series is Russ Piva, aka Stereo Russ, musician and host of Inside the Music with Stereo Russ. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's press play. Today on the Gritty History podcast, we're delving into one of Hamilton's most iconic music events, Festival of Friends. Founded in 1976 by Bill Powell, Festival of Friends is one of the city's premier summer music festivals and has featured performances from musicians like Stan Rogers, Jackie Washington, Burton Cummings, Gord Downie, and Arkells, alongside countless local artists, vendors, and community groups. Festival of Friends, which for much of its history has taken place in Hamilton's Gage Park, has ensured live music remains accessible through free admission to the event. This year marks the 50th edition of the festival, and it takes place, as always, on the first weekend in August. Co-hosting with Russ and I for this episode is Megan Wiles, Project Manager Exhibitions for Hamilton Civic Museums and curator of the music-themed Meet Me at the Bandshell exhibition, now open at Fieldcoat Museum in Ancaster. We're so lucky to be chatting with Rob Rakoczy, who has served as General Manager of the Festival of Friends since 2017. Rob, welcome to Catherine North Studios and the Gritty History podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here.
So, Rob, to get us started, could you share a little bit about the history of the Festival of Friends? How has it changed and grown over the years? And has it stayed true to its roots?
That's a big question. Let's start with the Festival of Friends was started by a man named Bill Powell, who was a coffee house owner. He had a coffee house called Night 2 with a K on Augusta Street in Hamilton. And he had a small record label with that, which is where Jackie Washington originally got signed and came from. And in 1976, he decided to get a lot of his connections and put on a giant folk party in the middle of Gage Park. And I've always joked about, if you watch the original Festival of Friends, it's extremely strange. It is fully an event by hippies for hippies. We look back now and we think of the festival as that was some kind of all-encompassing event that everybody attended and whatever. But it was very much, there was that era in the 1970s, if I get deep in the weeds, but there was that era in the 1970s where hippies were growing up and they needed to find a way to make a living. And they also didn't want to give up on art. So you end up in 1970s, you end up with CanCon laws start showing up. The National Indigenous Foundation shows up for the arts, Council for the Arts. You end up with, it's the era where, Sharon Lewis and Bram starts showing up. You start seeing all this art, right? Think of the golden age of the CBC. You start thinking of, we built Hamilton Place in the late 70s, the Center in the Square in Kitchener. When we think about why is that in a park in the middle of that was hippie mentality that was taken to some kind of financial level. And so Bill Powell was part of that idea of how can I make music? How can I stick to my folky, fight the man sort of kind of roots, but also be, pay for my bills and pay to raise a family and all that kind of stuff. And so the Festival of Friends started as that mission. And I always say, when people say, your question was, is the Festival of Friends, how has it changed? Is it the same? It's impossible for it to have been the same event that it was 50 years ago. That era, those people, that mentality, there was a lack of irony. You watch it, there's mimes on stage and there's strange beatnik poetry. There's, Hambone and all stuff that you do it now, somebody might be doing it ironically, or they might be trying to be retro, but this was just this was folk music. This was stuff coming from Quebec and coming from New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, and also a lot of it from Hamilton. And I think people don't really understand that that's the kind of genesis of it. And I think, part of the success of the event has been that It was built in an era before there were festivals in the way they are now. We take for granted the free festival. We see that, but like free festivals now, it's like, what are your demographics? What are your tourism numbers? What's the Ontario TREIM data you have? But back then it was just a bunch of people getting together to have a big party.
Yeah, there is some incredible footage too of that original event, which really captures just exactly what you're saying, and it is such a great way to get a feel for like what was this festival when it first began.
It is insanely lucky that the man was Jim Aquila. I don't know, he's passed away now, but it is incredible that he had the frame of mind to decide to film on 16 millimeter the first Festival of Friends. The fact that we have any footage from it, let alone like a 45-minute documentary, is incredible. It's on our YouTube channel, so check it out.
Yeah, it's great, and it's such a beautiful picture of Hamilton and the local music community. And I guess sort of building off of what you said, like what role does the festival play today within that local music community?
Well, I think the festival still has the same. I think it has a grander impact, like nationwide, province-wide, but I think it as a music venue, it is still the premier show to play. Everybody knows the Festival of Friends, the legacy, it's like playing Woodstock. It's like playing, Mariposa. It's been going on forever. Who doesn't want to be part of it? And I think it has just as much of an appeal to musicians to like see themselves to have people come see them in new light, or in a scenario where they've never been seen before, to be exposed. One of the things that I think the festivals should be most proud of is that artists that have become huge started or had like their almost start at the Festival of Friends. The Arkells played at 7 p.m. in 2011, and they opened for the Sheepdogs, who had just got on the cover of the Rolling Stone, and the Sheepdogs opened for City and Colour. Like what a lineup of people that were not necessarily, all of them were huge. Obviously City and Colour was, but those other two were not quite there. The other is like the Josh Ross, the country music Canadian singer. He's from Waterdown, lived in Burlington. And, I just met him through a friend, and I thought he was great. And we put him on at 4:00. And then the next year we put him on at like 5:30. And then the last year before COVID, he opened for Merle Haggard's Children. And the next thing you know, COVID happens, and in 2022, he's opening for Jelly Roll and doing his thing. It's incredible. That goes back all the way to the first festival. Raffi played the first Festival of Friends. Daniel Lanois played in 3 different bands that day. Tom Wilson was there on the first Festival of Friends, all people that became others. But also there were other huge acts like that would become, or that were big at the time: Stan Rogers, Sylvia Tyson, Ray Materik, all who had hits on the radio at that time. So it's very interesting to see how the festival's legacy, of being a showcase for new artists, does continue.
You've got an amazing resource on your website of listing all of the acts who have played, and it was so interesting to read through that and just see all of the incredible names that have come through Festival of Friends over the years. It was incredible. It's
endless. Everything from the B-52s to the band America to Don McLean singing American Pie to Steve Earle. I'm naming American bands, but like that was a big difference that started to change in just being able to put that kind of level of talent on the stage in the mid-2000s with the festival. But we've had, obviously, Burton Cummings played a few times, and Coburn's played a bunch of times, and it's a million names. I need the list.
Just you've been involved with the festival for a little while. Do you have any favorite memories or moments like during your tenure that have been really special? We've just talked about a bunch of different acts coming. I'm sure there's too many to name.
I think there's there's professional memories. I remember obviously the first time we brought it back to Gage Park in 2017, and that first night, actually it was the second night when I could finally take a break, and I was sitting in the back of the field, and we had no idea where even to put the stage, right? Up until people talk about the band shell. But in when we moved out of Gage Park, we were using the band shell.
Sorry, can you give us a bit of a timeline?
So in 76, we start the festival. It stays in Gage Park all the way up until 2010. At the end of 2010, for various reasons, some leadership in our organization, much more leadership at City Hall at the time, there was a lot of, I think the idea of an kind of like urban renewal wasn't really on the agenda in 2009, 2010, that era. There was very much a push of like, we're going to get out of the city, the downtown's falling apart. We hadn't quite got that idea. So council was very aggressive about ticketing people in the nearby neighborhoods, about charging us for small amounts of damage on the grass that any other person playing soccer could do, And it became to the point where it was getting very difficult for the festival to function in Gage Park. We couldn't use the area behind the band shell. Well, that was our backstage because the trees were in danger. And of course, we're not trying to damage the trees, but if we don't have a solution to that, what are we going to do? So it became all these issues just kept piling up, and not one issue was one thing, but essentially just a lack of responsiveness at City Hall to understand that what you have in this event. And that's when I was on the board at the time, but that's when we chose that we had no choice, we felt, to move to Ancaster. So in 2011, we had the first Festival of Friends in Ancaster. That's when City and Color headlined, and we were there for 6 years up until 2016, at which point the director who had my job before, Lauren Lieberman, retired. I took over, and my first step was we got to make new relationships with City Hall, and let's bring it back to Gage Park. And so when you come back to Gage Park, we still had some of those limitations, like the band shell, the trees, all that kind of stuff. But in a lot of ways, the festival had grown. The production requirements needed to put the stage on. We're using the same stage they'll bring into an arena to put on a concert like Ella Langley. It's the same, obviously not to that level, but it's a full staging. So we need to find a new spot. Also, just the way the park is orientated, it just doesn't make sense you end up, the crowds can't gather because you hit the greenhouse, and it's a whole thing. So it was like, we got to find a new spot. Can we even build a stage in the middle of the park? Can we make it happen? And that first year, to answer the question, the stage is set up and July Talk is on stage. And I remember sitting at the back, and I barely ever get a chance to watch anything, but I was there, and the guitar player is crowd surfing, and I'm just sitting at the very back. And it turns out that there's a natural, I'll take credit for my genius, but it turns out there's a natural slope on that part of the field, so that no matter where you're sitting in the park, you have a great view of the stage. And it just happened to be the only spot we could put the stage, but it also worked out. And I remember sitting there watching him, and I just kind of teared up a bit, and I was like, wow, we did this, it was the first one. We brought it back, and it's back, and it was a great success. So
I'm a big fan of a lot of the acts that you brought in. Last year, you brought in Sister Sledge.
Yes.
Which to me was I can't believe you brought Sister Sledge into town. I didn't know they were still doing their thing. So my curiosity always when it comes to big festivals like this, especially yours, has been around for so many years. It's how do you get legacy acts like that? What's the process for that?
I'm glad you said Sister Sledge. You enjoy Sister Sledge, because
that
was
Sister Sledge.
That was amazing.
Yes.
And I was a little disappointed that it didn't bring the crowd. And again, this is me being hard on myself,
sure.
But it didn't bring the crowd I would hope. But what it did do was bring an entirely new audience of people who probably have never come to the Festival of Friends. So I think one of the things we're trying to actively do is first appeal broadly in different ways, but also we still have to appeal in a large way, right? We're not an event like Super Crawl where it focuses on the niche acts on different stages, which is a limitation of the street and all that kind of stuff. They have 4 different great acts on at once that appeal to a smaller, but we're the big show. So with Sister Sledge, I was trying to bring in one of the things, just to get in the side note, I think a lot of people who go to a lot of these free festivals or festivals in Canada in general, Ontario especially, are getting a little bit bored of the same.
You brought War in, and you brought Sister Sledge, yes. And I'm this guy knows how to pick music.
I appreciate that, but that was part of the big thing. So a lot of the reason to get into the music stuff, the reason that all those Canadian bands tend to make the rounds, is because a lot of grant funding is related to that. A lot of we're trying to support Canadian acts, and of course we do. Sister Sledge. We had 2 bands last year that weren't Canadian, right? Everybody else was. It's always 95% Canadian. There's just a few, just to be clear. But in the case of, one of the benefits we've had is we've had great sponsorship. So we're able to take that money, not the grant money, and allocate it towards something different. And we end up with stuff like Sister Sledge. And that really is just, building relationships. We have a reputation. I mean, we got Tanya Tucker the year she won a Grammy for Best Country Album. And the only reason that happened was because of our reputation. She was driving, and it's also luck. She's driving between Batavia, New York, and somewhere in Michigan, and she needs a day. And why doesn't she stop here? But she's not going to stop at some other festival. She wouldn't have stopped at other events. But because we have these relationships and people know who we are, we're able to kind of make that work. And I think that's part of it. So like, when you reach out to the American agents, the big ones, they don't, like most people, they won't even take your call. It's just how that business is. But, we book one act and we show that we can do it. And then we book another, the same agent that represented Village People represented Sister Sledge. And that connection, seeing how well the Village People show was, where the band themselves wrote us a letter saying that was the biggest show we played to in decades.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right? Like insane. So that then gets like, well, let's get our band into this. Let's move it through. And they start to work with you. And that's kind of how it goes. And otherwise, it's like everything. It's timing, it's luck, it's availability, it's money. It's a lot of money. It's all about the money in the end. As much as they might want to play, they still want money. It's a little bit of everything, but it starts with just like, who do I like? Who's out there? Who's doing it? Can we make it work? Yeah. It makes me very happy to hear you say War and Sister Sledge.
A couple of my friends are really into like disco and like early 80s, like pop and stuff like that. And we all loved it. And since then we've been like jamming and writing music like that. And so it's like actually recreating and like reinvigorating that style of music. So it's like, it does have knock-on effects in the music community as well.
That's awesome. That's good. That's awesome. See?
If you're enjoying this conversation, you might want to check out the Punching In exhibition, which explores the work of Hamilton's music scene, on display at the Visitor Experience Center, located at 28 James Street North throughout 2026. Now, back to our conversation.
Like even doing Sugar Hill Gang too, and as an opener for that.
Yeah.
Like, like we don't do a lot of hip hop, we just don't. And, we do have a legacy as original, like we're trying to stick to, that's a question about like diversity. And we're always trying to bring different things in.
Yeah. It's a breath of fresh air here in Hamilton to get all the different diverse acts.
I always say that if the Festival of Friends, people, I don't know, I don't like this band or I don't know who this is. If every night of the Festival of Friends appeals to you, we're doing our job wrong. Right? Like you shouldn't come. If you like Sister Sledge, you probably aren't coming to see Dallas Smith or Brett Kissel. And that's okay. And maybe you like the Village People, but you're not going to come for the Trews. And that's okay too. Like the Trews are for people that like the Trews. And that's my kind of like way of looking at it. Like every day should be different.
And there's room for everybody and every kind of music taste within that festival, which is a really beautiful thing. And I think really gets to the core of what a community music festival can be, which is just amazing. And I think the inspiration and just sort of the knock-on effects that Russ was talking about that come out of an event like that are just incredible. And Hamilton's so lucky to have this event.
It really is. Like, it is incredible, and it's all about like that YMCA night, like 2024 Village People Saturday night. And I remember just a funny side story. My father was in the music business. I come from a music business background, and I wrote him and said, so I booked the Village People. They didn't ask him. I just booked it. And he said, nobody's going to come. And it ended up being the biggest night we've ever had in Gage Park, and like seeing 40,000 people singing, doing the YMCA dance on stage. Like it was jammed all the way to the parking lot, to Lawrence Road. Like it was everywhere. And it was just like one of those nights. It's like Hamilton, we all kind of miss more moments, like community moments. That's why people go to concerts and why tickets are $400 now. Because everybody wants to go to something where we're all gathered and we have some similar kind of thing we're grabbing onto. And Village People was that.
Speaking of the Village People, I'm going to quote them. No man does it all by themselves. Yet, from what I hear, you're a one-man show. Is this accurate?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons the festival can be has the money to do what it does is because it's a very, very lean machine. I'm doing the website. It's not about me, but like I'm doing the website, I'm doing the booking, I'm doing the logistics, I'm doing the podcast, I'm on the TV, I'm doing getting the sponsors, I do it all. And for that, I get compensated very poorly, but I get the reward of, no, it's, it is that we do have a vendor, a volunteer person who does that. So thankfully I'm not doing the vendor stuff, which is the worst job of all the jobs, just so difficult and time consuming. But yeah, it is I do everything. Now that's up until, Thursday, Wednesday of the festival, when 300 volunteers fall onto the Gage Park, and we turn into this well-oiled machine where now I don't have any roles really anymore. If we all do our job right, it's like it just runs whether I die tomorrow or not. But we've got volunteers who come in from. I mean, that's a big. yes, I do a lot of the stuff in the winter, but when it comes to the festival itself, we have a team of 12 people who come in from New Brunswick. They take the week off work and they drive in from New Brunswick. They've done that for a decade just to and they sleep in the park. They bring trailers and tents, and there's a baby this year. It's going to be at the festival, be the 4th generation of volunteer at the festival. But how much can a baby lift? Not enough.
You'll find out. Yeah.
Can you lift 25 pounds, baby, is my line.
Well, if people are looking to get involved with the festival as a volunteer, what kind of opportunities are available, or how would they go about sort of investigating how to be part of the Festival of Friends that way? I mean, the best way is just to go to our website, festivalofriends.ca. There's a volunteer button, click it, fill out the form just to let us know your age, your, limitations or background or whatever. There are roles and everything. We will take people who want to learn stage stuff. We need people who want to learn sound. There's people who have a service background, and there's always beer to be served. There's logistics as far as laying out parking lots, and there's also sanitation. There's also the unfun jobs, which we all do too. But there are all sorts of, there's surveys to be taken. There's data to input. There's all sorts of, if you have a background in anything, I assure you there is a role for the Festival of Friends for you. And you don't have to do the whole weekend. You can do a few hours. We can find something for you. But without the volunteers, it's nothing. A lot of other festivals have hundreds of staff members. If we were spending that, we'd be spending, that's the money we would have spent on Sister Sledge, And instead, our security outside of the beer area, our security is volunteer. People in security have been there for 30 years doing it. It's all volunteer. I mean, that really is all it comes down to. Backstage hospitality. We need people who want to, mop up after Big Wreck, not that they're particularly messy.
Sign me up.
There's always something, and people work their way up. Maybe the first few years there's people who are on our board who started. There was one guy who on the board whose name was Pylon, and because his job was just stay on the parking lot and block something, and now he's on the board. And that was a 20-year run, but that's the festival has a space for everybody.
And what an incredible opportunity for those. We've talked a lot on this podcast about how to break into the industry if you want to work in and around music, and what a great way to sort of test out a couple of different options.
I was given opportunities like this when I was young. If you are good and you are a hard worker and you are on it, you will be noticed and you will start to get better roles as the time goes on. It is, and I think that's why a lot of these people come back every year, because it's just, it's part of the game.
Rob, you just mentioned that you got opportunities to be involved in something like this when you were younger, and you also mentioned that your family was involved in the music business. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that and how that led to your path to being on the board and now the general manager?
My father was in promotion and was a promoter, and he was a tour manager. And, when I was 5 years old, I was getting calls from the Beach Boys on my birthday, and they would leave a message just singing happy birthday in harmony. I had a lucky, interesting.
You too, huh? Sorry.
I once had Chinese food when I was 4 with Roy Orbison, apparently, but I don't remember it. So, a lot of fun stories, and that was a lot of my weird childhood and stuff. And so being in that world, I went to work at MJM Productions, which was a studio that Mike McCurley started, who's a musician in town, who will be hosting a stage this year. He is responsible for writing or co-writing the Pizza jingle, the Mandarin theme song jingle, a theme song when I go in for.
It kind of is.
Yeah. And also the African Lion Safari. So I would walk in there, and he knows Dan Lanwell. He's friends with him. So I remember walking to that studio when I was 18 years old, and just all these demo tracks and stuff. And it was very interesting to and he gave me that opportunity to prove yourself. And next thing you know, I'm managing that place, and then I joined the board for the festival, and it just kind of keeps going. There's no schooling for this stuff. People should know that. You can just be good at your job, be competent, and maybe likable. I'm getting there on that.
What advice would you have for someone who is starting out? Maybe they've been doing an event for 2 to 3, 4 years, and they want to move it to that next level. Do you have any advice for someone who's just starting out?
I mean, the first one is, I hate to give this as the first advice, but in this climate, the first thing is get good at writing grants. I think, and there's maybe you got to hire somebody to do it who does it, but that's the first part. But as far as an actual thing, it's find the niche. I think that's your, what do you do? What will you bring that's different? What separates you? but also be aware of your audience. You know, if you want to do a very obscure specific indie thing, just know you're not going to appeal to people. I would think buy stuff when you can. You know, if you need like 100 feet of fencing and you can store it somewhere, buy it. Don't rent it every year. You know, in 10 years, it'll pay for itself, you know. Finding sponsors, but like being kind, like finding people that are interested in the same thing. So for example, to give you an example, there's a man named Derek Keys who is a wonderful, I would call him a little bit of a philanthropist in town, but like a successful businessman who's passionate about various things. And back in like 2019, I rented a RV from this like Airbnb for RVs. And he had the RV and he brought it into the park. Never even heard of the Festival of Friends. And me and him, I was just like, hey man, like, he's like, oh, you're a music guy, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, why don't you come and like watch the show? And next thing you know, me and him are like best buds. And, you know, turns out he owns a multi-million-dollar company called secondshop.ca. And now they're a huge sponsor for the festival. You know, make relationships with people. And if people are interested and excited, get on board with them. And like, really like, if somebody is interested in being a sponsor or interested in being involved, or they reach out to you and they have something, try to like, I don't know, pull them in and like, just kind of like get them part of that, to make them feel like they're valued, because I mean, they usually have something to say. It's about friends, right? Like it's about like, you got to get people to like buy in with you on it, not literally with money, but it's like, you're just not going to get it done if you have to hire for every job. It's just not how it's going to happen. You've got to, not to say you don't pay people eventually. It's not to say, but like, let's get like the four of us could start something right now. And I feel like we'd figure something out. It would be successful because we'd be into whatever we were doing. But the second we want to do something else, like you just want to hire people. Like if I was like, hey, I'm doing this thing, I'll pay you. You might be doing it, but you're not like in it. You know, it's like that investment. I think that's the big thing. It's why something like Firefest explodes when all you're doing is throwing money at it. You know, that's the big scale, but.
Yeah, I think it's really, that's so speaking about the Hamilton community for music, everybody just sort of like comes together and gets the thing done. And that's what's really beautiful about this city in both music as well as other parts of the community. And I think there's definitely a lesson in that, and sort of working with people and everybody bringing their talents to the table.
Yeah, and when everybody gets behind it, like this year, the mayor has been really a force for like really pushing through and like having people in tourism, the sponsors of this wonderful podcast, being behind us. Like it really is. When the community gets together, we can do anything, you know, like paint the bandshell brand the colors of 76 or whatever. So, you know.
So can you tell us about some of your favorite memories at the festival?
Right, because I went to the crying one, but those are there's so many. So like, you know, back in the early years of the festival, I mean, one of my favorite moments was Richie Havens. So some people know who that is. It's unfortunate that less people know, but he was the first act to play at Woodstock in '69. He is a famous folk singer. He's passed away probably 5-6 years ago now. But Richie Havens, like, this is a legend of legends, right? He's played with everybody from Ray Charles all the way down to Peter Gabriel, right? Like, he's everywhere. And I had the opportunity to pick him up at the airport, and I'm driving with him, and he goes, I hear there's something called Tim Hortons in this country. And I was like, this is so right. This is 2010, 2009 Food World. So like, that was still like funny. And like, you know, we love Tim Hortons, of course, but you know, but that was like the idea of like a brand of coffee from Canada it was still obscure to people. And like now, of course, everyone in America knows about Tim Hortons because of social media, but I digress. So he's like, I hear about Tim Hortons. He's like, yeah, it's like, we should stop and try it. And I said, well, would you like to go to the very first Tim Hortons? Because it just happens to be like 30 feet from the park. And he goes, Rob, that's what we're going to do. And so there we are. And I have a picture of a very young, horrible looking me with Richie Havens standing in front of the plaque at the original Tim Hortons. And like, that was a great time. You know, I remember driving him back to the airport at the end of the festival, and him just like, we had these long conversations where he was just like, we were working on a play. He had an idea for a play, and he was like asking my ideas on it. Like, obviously my ideas were stupid. That's not what the story's about. And I don't remember what the play was about, but this man, this incredible, at that point, 70-year-old guy who's been everywhere is just like vamping with me about music and like art and like everything. It's just, it's the most bizarre thing, and like the same thing with, John Anderson, the lead singer. Yes. That was another one where I happened to like become to the point where I was invited to his house in California. And, like just by driving, I'm like, and like my favorite moment, and I'll just get off of that, but my favorite moment was driving in the car with him and his wife and taking him, we're up in Ancaster at this point, and there's all those roundabouts on Wilson Street. And like, this is the man who wrote Roundabout. And he goes to there and he looks at the sky and he goes, I was driving through a roundabout just like this when I started to sing, and I looked up in the sky and, and he started singing like, and he does a high-pitched voice. And it was just like, I can't believe like John Anderson from Yes is just like singing Roundabout in his like weird way,
In a roundabout.
Like, you're right. Like there's so many.
You've had some amazing stories of established and really well-known acts. As part of your job, you must get to see some of the up-and-coming and the local acts as well. Is there anybody sort of you're watching? We've asked other guests if there's anyone in Hamilton that they're like, hey, watch out for these people, or maybe check these people out the next time you're out at a bar. Any acts you'd like to hype or highlight?
There's a few. So I've always been a fan of the Red Hill Valleys. I have been a huge supporter of them before they were even signed to any agents or whatever. Great. They are like tremendous band. They kill. They absolutely can play. And again, another act that like I put them on early, but in 2023 I gave them the opportunity to like open for James Barker Band. And that's like a huge thing for a country band like that to open for James Barker Band. Now it rained that year, so they kind of got to play, but it wasn't to the crowd they hoped. So this year, I'm really grateful that we can give them a chance to play opening for Dallas Smith this year. I love Matt Paxton from the Pintos. I love that band. I think he's great. Love that guy.
It's a killer band.
Yeah. There's a lot of, here's one that's not even up and coming, but that like one thing that Hamilton is really bad at is finding or recognizing musicians that aren't out there in the way that is traditional, right? Like we all know who plays cat and fiddle, but for example, last year, and he just applied on the website. So we do we go through the applications, but this guy named Tepno, Tepno, he is the most streamed artist in Hamilton history by a lot. He's like a songwriter. He's like it's kind of like DJ, kind of like ambient, kind of chill, kind of songwriting. And he's got a bunch of songs that have like hundreds of millions of listens. And he was on Ryan Seacrest's radio show a few years ago. And he's from Montreal, but he's been living in Hamilton for like 15 years. And nobody, including myself, knows who he is. And it's like one of those but yet he has more streams than Daniel Lanois and every other name you can think of all the way down the line. And yet there he is, There are so many of those kind of artists. I know who I'm going to say. The Poops. I don't know if you guys know the Poops, but they're like Primus Reborn. They probably aren't appropriate for the band shell, but they're playing the band shell this year. I love those guys. I just saw them at Bridgeworks one day and they are incredible. So that's one. There's so many. I mean,
I have kind of a follow-up to that.
Mm-hmm.
When you're bringing in bands, as we mentioned, all the huge acts and legendary acts that you've talked about, and then you also have this, up-and-coming band, or maybe someone that no one's heard of, but you find are interesting, maybe you saw them at a show sometime. Mm-hmm. How do you decide, who gets in when you're trying to respect the relationships that you've already created, creating new relationships, and bringing in people that people may not have known? Yeah,
I think it's the part of the job I hate the most. Like outside of the actual, marking the park with spray paint on the Wednesday of the festival, I hate it because I'm going to let somebody down. I'm going to let lots of people down. I and the board are not the final idea on taste for music. It's easy to say Sister Sledge. We all know Sister Sledge is great. I mean, the record sales, the awards, that tells me that they're, and then you've got people I know or people I booked before who are like, can I come back this year? It's like, yeah, I want you to come back, but also I want to give opportunity for other people. Honestly, I hate that. I hate it. It's like, it's you cannot win, and it's never going to be the lineup you hope for in the daytime. It's never going to be the right acts. It'll be the right acts, but it'll be like not all the acts that should be there, or all the deserving acts that should be there. And there's also like the element of like a business element, like you might be a great act that plays, but you also play a lot of shows, especially around here. And it's like, I'm also trying to book people that are going to bring. So if you're like a really great band that's only played a couple shows in Hamilton and you're coming to the festival to play, you're going to bring like 50 people. And like at noon, bringing 50 people is awesome for the festival. You're going to tell your friends, a lot of artists play so often that they kind of wear out their interest with their own community and they don't come. And so I try to like put that as part of it, try to give opportunities to new acts, but I hate it. I would like, I'd rather just start at the headliners. It's just, everybody's going to be sad. It's like trying to choose your favorite child all the time,
Yeah.
The festival is celebrating its 50th year in 2026. What can attendees expect to experience this year?
Well, I mean, the big one, there's a bunch of big things, but Feist,
Yes.
Saturday, August 1st, Feist in Hamilton for free on the heels of the heated rivalry, love on top of that. It's ridiculous. It shouldn't have happened. That's another testament, like the Tanya Tucker thing. That is a testament to her, both just the respect that our event has with the agents and the management. That her manager also happens to be the manager for Bahamas, and he pretty much said like, I was there, and it was not anything I expected. It was incredible. I was there for Bahamas. Let's do it. We would never come up with the full money that Feist would require. This is a person that sells out 3 nights in Massey Hall. You can do the math on $100 ticket at Massey Hall, do that 3 nights in a row. You can see how much it costs. That doesn't mean it was cheap. It doesn't mean it was free. She is a worldwide artist who everybody would book, and she's only taking a few dates. But she liked the quote I heard was, I'm turning 50, festival's turning 50. Sounds fun. I don't know if it's true, but that's what I heard down the line. So opening for Feist will be Basha Bula. She is a folk. She's played Supercrawl a few times, headlined Supercrawl a couple times. She did a symphony show at Hamilton Place a few years ago. There is a very hardcore group of people that love her, and she will be there. So it's a cool indie night. Mm-hmm. Of course, Friday is Dallas Smith, who, again, one of the things I say about the festival, I've said this to you probably 5 times, Megan, but one of the things about the festival that's amazing is, last year we had Brett Kissel for free in Gage Park, right? And if you're a country fan, that's incredible, especially when there's like a festival, Route 905, that's coming. Mm-hmm. Great bunch of guys running that. But that festival has Brett Kissel, and tickets are $90 a piece for the exact same act, And I think one of the things that I had a chance to speak at City Hall last week, and I was able to say, understand what we're bringing. You may not know who that is, but you should see that the value. We brought Tom Cochran. You can see Tom Cochran for free, or you can see him at this festival for $110. And Dallas Smith is he's playing 2 other shows in Ontario this summer, 2 other festivals. Both tickets are starting at like $110 and $120. And it's not like it's Dallas Smith and 2 other big names. It's Dallas Smith. That's the main reason people are paying that money, and you can come for free. So Dallas Smith is incredible. Red Hill Valley is opening. Tommy Swick opening for Red Hill Valleys. And then, of course, the final one is the big 50th anniversary night. There was a lot of pressure both on the organization and on myself of like, what are we going to do to celebrate 50 years? It can't just be like another big name, and again, there's only so much money in the world. And so we're doing I call it the last waltz, but it's not the last waltz, where we're going to have Blackie and the Rodeo Kings as the house band. And then we're going to have a long list of guests come up and do 1 or 2 songs each. So I should probably have the list in front of me. In fact, let me just do that. So we have Chantel Kriviadzak. She's going to do Feels Like Home. She's going to do Leaving on a Jet Plane. We've got Matt Mays, which hasn't even been announced yet, but will be. We've got Biff Naked, who's going to do a couple songs. We've got James and Scott, the lead singer and the guitar player from Finger 11, are going to do a couple songs acoustic. We got Brad Roberts, the voice of Crash Test Dummies, and he's going to do, this isn't like they're going to do a bunch of random covers. They're going to do their biggest songs. He's going to do he's going to do Superman's song. Maestro Fresh West is going to do Let Your Backbone Slide. And I had a conversation with Tom Wilson, and I said, can you do Let Your Backbone Slide like with the band? He's like, Blackie and the Rodeo Kings can do anything. Okay. So we'll see how that's going to work out. Hawksley Workman. We've got Tay-Bay, who is a country artist. We've got Dan Hill. And you're like, who's Dan Hill? Oh, you know Dan Hill because sometimes when we touch that feeling, right? Yes. He's going to play that song, solo piano. We're going to see Dan Hill on stage. He's going to play his biggest song And then another guy is going to come on and do his other song, right? And we've got Andy Kim, who wrote Sugar Sugar, do 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 do. Again, you don't know the name, but you do know that that's the biggest pop song of all time. You know, one of the biggest bubblegum pop songs of all time. We got Mark Jordan, again, who's that? Oh, well, he wrote The Rhythm of Your Heart for Rod Stewart, as among many other songs. Tara Lightfoot's going to be there. Ashley McIsaac's going to come. The lead singer, Mo Berg of The Pursuit of Happiness, is coming. I'm an adult now. He's going to do that song. We've got Teenage Head going to do their songs. We've got Elliot Brood come to do a song. We've got Harrison Kennedy going to do a song. And we're doing, on top of all of that, so it's going to be like a 2.5, maybe 3 hour night of just all sorts of hits. And we got guests going to come. There's a few extras that'll show up last minute. I know there's a bunch of stuff. You know, the Biff Naked, just like literally, we didn't even reach out to her. Her agent wrote and said like, hey, can she be part of this thing? And that's kind of the big thing about this whole thing. It's been like, it started with getting a few people on board, but now it's snowballing and people are hearing about it. And, you know, that's 20 different major Juno Award winning, like Dan Hill has sold more albums, like literally like 20 times platinum for that one song. You know, it's ridiculous. And to kick that night off,
Dramatic pause.
And to kick that night off, Sharon from Sharon Lewis and Bram is going to come on stage before that show starts, and we're going to do, it could be the world's largest, but definitely a Hamilton's largest sing-along of Skinamarink.
Oh, nice.
And like and fish and chips and vinegar to warm everybody up. But you know, and that's going to be a great night. And of course, they're also going to play the children's the band shell in the daytime for the children who can't stay up till 8:30. But it's just like, it's a crazy night. You know, Blackie and the Rodeo Kings are going to do their song. Like, it's just going to be a long, great night of just like song after song after song after song, just to celebrate the festival. So, yeah. Oh, and Great Lake Swimmers are going to open for all that.
Amazing way
What more do
to
you guys want?
celebrate the city of music this year. Music's been such a focus, and this just sounds like it's another incredible event that Hamilton can enjoy and enjoy for free at Gage Park.
Juno Awards what by the time August 2nd's over?
I can't wait to attend.
Not all heroes wear capes. So on behalf of everyone here in Hamilton, the work that you do is unspoken, definitely behind the scenes, and definitely appreciated. So thanks so much for everything you do.
Someone else would do it if I died.
But you're doing it now.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
I do. Thank you, though. No, I really love, like, this isn't a great event. This is like, I am honored to be the caretaker of this institution. And I hope that when I leave it a long time from now, it will be in even better shape than I took it over. That's all we can do, which is what Bill Powell said at the very first Festival of Friends. If you leave the park in good shape, maybe there'll be a Festival of Friends next year. And here we are.
Thank you for listening to the Gritty History Podcast, brought to you by the City of Hamilton and Hamilton Civic Museums. This episode was hosted by Meredith Leonard and Russ Piva. Produced and edited by Stereo Russ Media. Original music by Emma Whale. This series' episodes were recorded at CFMU Studios at McMaster University, Catherine North Studios, and Bridgeworks. If you enjoyed listening, please share this podcast with someone who loves all things Hamilton and history. Please rate, review, and subscribe. If you'd like to explore more, you can visit us online at hamiltoncivicmuseums.ca. Thank you for listening.